In this video, I'm going to break down the 10 responsibilities of a landlord. I want you to stick around to the end because number 10 is easily the most important one. Now remember, if you love this sort of content, then don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course, click that bell icon to see more of me dropping value like this. So landlords, what do you need to do to fulfill your obligations? Number one thing that you need to do is make sure that you are protecting your tenant's deposit in a government-backed scheme. Now, there's multiple government-backed schemes that you could potentially go to. You can go to My Deposits, for example, which is one that I use. Top tip, if you do want to use My Deposits, if you're a member of the National Resident Landlord Association, which is something like 80 quid a year, don't hold me to that, and that's going to give you a discount for all of the deposits that you insure with My Deposits. I say insure because there's two types of ways of protecting a deposit to be compliant. Number one is a custodial scheme, which is where you basically take the tenant's deposit, you send it off to one of these government-backed schemes, and then you leave the deposit there until the tenant moves out. The other is an insured scheme where you pay for insurance and you keep the deposit. So you might pay something like £20 to insure the deposit on behalf of the tenant. Now, if you don't protect the deposit, the tenant has a legal right to take that deposit back from you, and they don't have to prove anything other than the fact that you did not protect their deposit properly. Now, I strongly recommend taking deposits, and I strongly recommend protecting them. God forbid, you might one day need them if there are damages or any unpaid rent when a tenant exits the property. In addition to that, as it's a bit relevant, I would also say take an inventory of the property when you move in. It's worth taking photographs of the property and the condition of the property and getting a tenant to agree to that within a couple of weeks of them moving in and assessing the condition for themselves. So that's number one, making sure you're protecting deposits so you don't get caught out, and protecting them in the correct way and serving the certificate to prove that you've protected it within 30 days of that tenant moving into the property. Number two, you need to make sure that you're providing your tenant with a gas safety certificate. This is renewed on an annual basis to make sure you get a competent person to the property, a heating engineer who can carry out a gas safety certificate. Super simple stuff, shouldn't be too expensive. And while they're at it, why not get them to do a little service of your boiler as well? That's a critical one. That's a non-negotiable one. By the way, if you don't serve some of this documentation, it could affect your ability to later serve other paperwork on a tenant. Let's say you want a tenant for some reason to move out, you can actually restrict your ability to get that tenant out because you haven't served them the correct paperwork in the first instance. And that includes, believe it or not, things like a gas safety certificate. Number three, you're going to need to serve them with an energy performance certificate, the EPC, for the property. Because they're going to be responsible for paying the bills, you need to give them some idea of the type of bills that they might well be paying. Now, keep an eye on these regulations because over time you'll notice that there's lots of talk about energy performance certificates and energy performance scores needing to go higher. If you're wondering how you can make your energy performance score higher, it's very simple. You go online, you type in energy performance register or energy performance certificate register even, and then when you're on there, you stick in the postcode of the property, you find the energy performance certificate, and what's underneath it will be recommendations on how you can improve that energy performance score. So it might say, for example, add insulation to the loft, and they will show you how many points that will increase your score by and how you get yourself, say, for example, from an EPC rating of E to an EPC rating of C. It should also give you an indication of the approximate cost of that. But reverting back to the original point, make sure you provide that EPC to your tenant, and they last about 10 years. So if you have got one that's expiring, then make sure you get that renewed in good time as well. If you're using management softwares like Landlord or other softwares, you can automate reminders for this sort of thing. And again, relatively inexpensive. You're probably going to pay 80 quid to get someone to come round and do an EPC assessment on the property. But if you don't do it and you don't give it to your tenant, it's going to cost you a lot more. Believe me, I've seen it go wrong. Very wrong. Number four, make sure you're providing a tenant with an electrical installation condition report for the property. This one lasts 5 years, and that's the electrician coming around and making sure that everything is safe and compliant, carrying out their checks on the consumer unit and checking the circuits within the property, providing the scores. They should provide a test schedule with that, and then you provide that to your tenant as well so they can feel safe that when they touch the plug, their hand isn't going to blow off. I'm not sure if that's scientifically accurate, but you get the point. Either way, doesn't have to be. Just give them the certificate. It's worth it in the long run. Number 5, do not discriminate, or you cannot discriminate on someone on the basis of the fact that they might be claiming DSS. So if somebody is claiming, you can't just say, sorry, we don't accept DSS. You remember those days years ago? No dogs and no DSS? Those days are over, my friend. If somebody is claiming DSS, you can't just knock them back on that basis. Don't get me wrong, if they don't meet the income affordability criteria for your property, then you may still be able to decline them, but you can't decline them solely on that basis unless you are just a glutton for being sued and going through the court process. That's your problem, and this is probably the wrong video for you. Number 6, make sure you carry out right to rent checks. What does that mean? That means that your tenant has a legal right to be in this country. And that is going to truly backfire on you if you end up taking people that aren't even supposed to live in the UK. Believe it or not, that doesn't tend to go down very well with the government. Now, it's very easy if someone's provided you with British ID and they're a British citizen, that's super straightforward stuff. But if someone's coming from elsewhere, then you'll need to get copies of their visas, you'll need to get potentially share codes and all this other good stuff. Look, go to the government website. You can go through a very simple step-by-step process on there, search for right to rent, and it will ask you a series of questions and it will tell you whether or not you can take that person on, and if you do take them on, what you need to take in order to take them on. And keep all of these things on file for at least 6 years in case somebody retrospectively comes back. Now, even if you're trying to sell a property with tenants in situ, I'm speaking from experience here, we've had this issue in one of our property sales for our estate agency. If you're trying to do that and somebody can't provide the right to rent checks for a tenant that's in the property, just take it from me, it's a freaking headache. And the solicitor's going to advise the new person not to buy it because they don't want to take on the risk of buying something and taking on a fine, because they would then potentially be liable for that fine. Long story short, do the right to rent check, go to the website if you're not sure, it will tell you what you need to know. Number 7, if you fancy popping by the property, that's absolutely fine. Make sure you provide the tenant with adequate notice. Now, check your tenancy agreement, make sure it marries up with what I'm about to say, but ordinarily you'll need to provide at least 24 hours notice before visiting the property, and it would be unfair or unreasonable for a tenant to decline that without grounds. So if you're going to visit a property to carry out some basic maintenance, that should be absolutely fine. But as a matter of respect, beyond the matter of legislation, I strongly recommend that you give tenants as much warning as is humanly possible. Most tenants will be absolutely fine with this because ultimately you're usually going around there to check on the property, to maintain the property and to improve it for them, which is why fostering good relationships is obviously very important when you're a landlord and you are dealing with tenants. Remember, all businesses, no matter what business you're in, boils down to relationships. So treat them with respect and let them know when you're going to be coming around. Now, slightly different if you've got an HMO property. Most tenancy agreements will allow you access to communal spaces without notice at all, but the same will apply to the tenant's room because that's their space. Even still, I recommend giving tenants notice in an HMO if you're going to be attending the property or if you're going to have tradespeople attending the property for any reason. So minimum 24 hours notice. Of course, it can vary if you've got HMO properties, but I still recommend as best practice, you actually try and provide more than 24 hours, 48, I would say, as a minimum, out of respect and in order to preserve an ongoing, happy and healthy relationship with your wonderful tenants. Number 8, this is one that, believe it or not, many people fall at this very small and simple and easy to conquer hurdle, and that is provide your tenants with a how to rent guide. Some of you will sit there right now and go, what the frick is a how to rent guide? That, my friend, if you're a landlord, should be your first alarm bell. So a how to rent guide is a government guide on how to rent. I mean, come on, that bit you could have figured out, surely. So the government guide on how to rent, it's a legal obligation that you supply your tenant with that guide when they are moving into the property. And if you don't, goes back to everything I said before, you are going to limit your ability to serve any potential documentation later on. Let's say you want to get someone out, let's call it what it is. If you want to try and get somebody out your property and you never gave them the how to rent guide, good luck with that. Let's just say that. And so I also recommend, by the way, sending all of this stuff electronically. And then you've got a record of the fact that you've actually sent. So we've just got a standard email that we send to tenants with all of this paperwork within it. Don't get me wrong, can't be sure anyone's ever opened half of it, but at least we can prove that we sent it over to them. So the How to Rent guide, if you're wondering where you'll find that guide, go to Google, type in How to Rent guide. It will take you to the government website. You can download it as a PDF, attach it to your email with your tenancy agreement, your EPC, your gas safety certificate, your EICR, your deposit protection. Oh, by the way, when you protect a deposit, there's also a guide that goes with that you need to supply as well. But this one's such a small and simple thing that so many people get wrong. So that's number 8. Number 9, make sure you've got adequate smoke alarms in the property. Depending on the type of property, you may need different levels of coverage. You may need a different grade of system. Take it from a man that has pulled people from burning buildings, humble brag, and save lives. All right, big brag. But take it from the man that actually was in the fire service. Smoke prevention, detection, smoke detection. It's clearly been a few years since I left. Smoke alarms save lives. It's all over the side of fire engines. Why do you think they put it there? For fun? No, it's because smoke alarms save lives. So make sure you've got not just the minimum. By the way, don't just do don't find out what the minimum you need to do is. Do the optimum that's going to allow you to sleep at night and make sure that you never have to deal with anyone's health and safety on your conscience. You get what I'm saying. You can read between the lines. And last, but by no means least, and this is why I said stick around, number 10, I personally think it's the most important one. Take a good, hard look at the property that you are renting out and ask yourself the question, would I live in this house in the condition that I am presenting it to this other equal human being? And if the answer is no, then sort it out. Make sure you're providing homes, not just houses. Make sure you are making things robust. They are safe. They are enjoyable. This is where someone's going to spend a large portion of their life. Imagine the responsibility that we have as landlords to provide an environment for somebody, potentially for their family to grow in, but an environment for people to laugh, for people to cry, for people to, you know what else they do in their house. That's none of your business either. But make sure that you are going the extra mile to make this house a home. That is probably one of the biggest responsibilities of a landlord. What we're doing here is not just a business. What we're doing here is providing homes for people and helping to solve a housing shortage across the nation. If you think I've missed anything, then please do add it in the comments. I always love your contributions. I love your support, and I want to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, let me know what your favorite one is in the comments. And of course, like I said, if you love this content, if you think I'm fantastic, if you want to change your life through property investing, then hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell icon, and let's make the rest of your life the best of your life.